Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really big one, the House of Saud.
That's right, the ruling royal family of Saudi Arabia.
You sent over this incredibly detailed Wikipedia article, and well, our mission today is to pull out the key stuff, right?
Exactly. Give everyone a solid understanding, their origins, their history, power, wealth, all that, without getting lost in, every single minor detail.
Okay, sounds like a plan. We want the core story.
Precisely. We've synthesized this overview to give a clear picture.
Great, so where do we start? Origins, I guess.
Makes sense. Let's start with the name itself, Al Saud.
Right. It sounds simple, but there's a nuance.
There is. Al Saud. It means the family of Saud.
Okay.
And you have to distinguish it slightly from Al short A, which just means the.
Okay.
Bel, that longer A means family of or house of. It refers specifically to the descendants of Saud ibn Muhammad ibn Mukrin.
He was the father of the founder.
Yes, the father of Mohammed bin Saud, who founded the first Saudi state back in the 18th century.
Got it. So, genealogically speaking, where did this family come from before that? What tribe?
They belong to the Banu Hanifa tribe, a very old, very significant tribe in Arabia.
Right.
And their more direct line, the Al Saud ancestors, traces back to Manami ibn Rabia al-Muraidi.
Okay.
He and his clan, the Mruda, settled in a place called Diriyah. This was way back, mid-15th century.
1446, 1447, something like that?
That's what the sources suggest, yeah.
And why Diriyah specifically? Did they just happen upon it?
No, actually, Mani was invited there.
Huh?
By a relative, Ibn Dir, who was basically the ruler of the area, which is now part of Riyadh.
Okay, so an invitation.
Yeah, Mani's clan was living out east, near Al-Qatif. Ibn Dir gave him a couple of estates.
Generous.
It was. And Mani, out of gratitude, actually named the whole area Al-Diriyah after his benefactor, Ibn Dir.
Wow, okay. So that invitation really set the stage.
It absolutely did. Diriyah grew, became this key settlement along the Wadi Hanifa.
Their power base.
Their initial power base, yes. And as the clan, the Mruda, expanded, well, you know how families are.
Yeah, power dynamics.
Exactly. Some branches moved away, but it was the Al-Mukrin branch, Mani's descendants, who stayed and eventually became the rulers there.
Okay. Now, the article mentioned other branches, cadet branches, still Al Saud, but not, like, in line for the throne.
That's right. The main line, the kings, descend from Ibn Saud, the founder of modern Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
But the surname Al Saud is also used by descendants of Mohammed bin Saud's brothers, Farhan, Thunayan, Mishari.
So the family is much wider.
Much wider. You have branches like Saud al-Kabir, al-Jalui, al-Thunayan. They're considered cadet branches.
But still influential.
Oh, definitely. They hold important government posts, and there's a lot of intermarriage within the Al Saud, which keeps everyone connected and maintains influence, even if they aren't directly in the succession line.
Interesting. Okay, that's a good foundation on the origins. The article then breaks their history down into 4 phases. Let's walk through those.
Sounds good. Help structure it.
First up, the Sheikhdom of Diriyah, 1446-1744. What was this like?
This was really their early period, ruling Diriyah, establishing it, but before the big political and crucially religious expansion, they were local rulers, basically laying the groundwork.
Got it. Then phase 2, the Emirate of Diriyah, or the first Saudi state, 1727-1818. This seems like where things really kick off.
Absolutely. A major turning point, founded by Mohammed bin Saud.
The one whose father gave the family its name.
The very same. This era saw huge territorial growth, and critically, the rise of Salafism.
The strict interpretation of Islam.
Extremely strict, yes. And this is where Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab comes in. His alliance with Mohammed bin Saud was fundamental.
The political and religious power is uniting.
Exactly. They called themselves Muwahidun monotheists. The term Wahhabi actually came later, from outsiders naming it after Abdul Wahhab.
And this alliance fueled expansion.
Massively. But it also led to conflict. The article mentions a raid on Karbala in 1802.
Yes, that sounded intense.
It was. Karbala is a hugely important Shiite holy city in Iraq. The Saudi forces attacked it, killed thousands, plundered it, even destroyed the dome over Hussein ibn Ali's tomb.
Wow, that must have had massive repercussions.
It did. It really convinced the Ottomans and the Egyptians that these Saudis were a serious threat to regional stability.
Yeah, and that ultimately led to the end of this first state.
Pretty much. Abdulaziz, who led that raid, was assassinated not long after, maybe in retaliation.
Okay.
His son Saud took over, expanded further, but Saud's successor, Abdullah bin Saud, faced a big Ottoman-Egyptian invasion.
Sent to crush them.
Essentially, yes. The Egyptians captured Diriyah in 1818. Abdullah was taken away, beheaded in Constantinople.
Oof.
Yeah. Many Al Saud members were exiled, Diriyah was destroyed. It looked like the end for them.
But clearly wasn't. Which brings us to Phase 3, the Emirate of Nejd, the second Saudi state, 1824-1891, a comeback.
A comeback, yes, but maybe a bit different. They reestablished control in Nejd, but this time based in Riyadh.
Riyadh becomes the new capital.
Right, but they didn't regain all the territory like the Hijaz, the western part of Arabia.
And the religious zeal, was it still as strong?
It was still there. They used the title imam, relied on Salafi scholars, but maybe less overt, less of a driving force for expansion compared to the first time around.
Okay. But the article suggests this period wasn't exactly peaceful internally.
Far from it. This second state was really plagued by internal conflict, constant fighting within the family.
Assassinations, civil wars.
Yep. Peaceful succession was the exception, not the rule. Faisal ibn Turki passing power to his son Abdullah was basically the only time it happened smoothly.
So that infighting weakened them.
Critically weakened them, made them vulnerable, and eventually it collapsed again around 1891.
Which leads us to Phase 4, the current one, starting 1902, the modern state.
Exactly. And the key figure here is Abdulaziz, often known as Ibn Saud.
The founder of modern Saudi Arabia.
That's him. In 1902, he pulls off this daring recapture of Riyadh from the rival al-Rashid family.
Legendary event.
It really is. And that kicked off like a 30-year struggle to unify Central Arabia.
He had a lot of rivals to deal with.
Oh, yeah. The al-Rashid, the Sharifs of Mecca and the Hijaz, plus navigating relations with the Ottomans and, crucially, the British.
British support was important.
Became very important, especially later on.
So how did he consolidate power?
Well, he defeated the al-Rashidis, finally, in 1921, controlled most of Central Arabia, the Sultanate of Nejd. Then he conquered the Hijaz by 1926.
So he ruled two kingdoms for a bit.
For a few years, yeah. Kingdom of Hejaz and Nejd. Then, in 1932, having beaten his main rivals, he formally united them.
Into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the nation we know today.
And just a few years later, something else major happens.
Boom. Oil. Discovered near Dammam in 1937.
That must have changed absolutely everything.
Completely transformed their fortunes, the country's trajectory, global politics. I mean, before oil, many royals lived, well, relatively modestly.
Hard to imagine now.
Isn't it? This vast wealth just changed the game entirely.
Ibn Saud also used marriage quite strategically, didn't he?
He absolutely did. He married women from basically all the major influential tribes and clans in his territory.
Like the Bani Khalid, Ajman, Shamar.
Exactly. And also the Al-Ash Sheikh, the descendants of Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, reinforcing that key religious alliance.
So it was about building alliances, loyalty.
Precisely. Weaving the kingdom together, integrating these powerful groups through marriage ties. He had his sons do the same. Very shrewd.
Okay, so Ibn Saud dies in 1953. What happens with succession then? He had many sons.
He did. He designated his eldest surviving son, Saud, as the heir, with the next eldest, Faisal, to follow him.
So Saud becomes king.
He does, but it didn't go smoothly. Saud's rule was seen as, well, extravagant and maybe ineffective.
Leading to conflict with Faisal.
A big power struggle, yeah. It culminated in 1964 when the royal family, backed by the religious scholars, forced Saud to abdicate.
In favor of Faisal.
In favor of Faisal. It's also worth noting, during Saud's time, some younger brothers, the Free Princes, actually defected for a while, calling for reforms.
Wow. So internal dissent even then.
Oh, yes. They came back, were pardoned, but largely kept out of top jobs after that.
So after Faisal took over, the succession followed a pattern for a long time. Brother to brother.
Pretty much, yes. Among Ibn Saud's sons, Faisal ruled until he was assassinated in 1975.
By a nephew, rather.
By a nephew, yes. His brother Khalid then became king. Interestingly, the next brother in line, Muhammad, stepped aside for Khalid.
Okay, so some internal agreements there too.
Seems so. Khalid died in 82 and Fahd took over.
Fahd, part of the Suderi Seven.
That's right, the eldest of that really powerful block of 7 full brothers, sons of Ibn Saud and Hassa al-Suderi.
They held a lot of influence.
Immense influence. Fahd also adopted the title custodian of the 2 Holy Mosques.
Co-placing His Majesty.
Yes, in 1986. When Fahd had a stroke in 95, his half-brother Abdullah, who was crown prince, gradually took over the reins.
Becoming king officially when Fahd died in 2005.
Correct. And Abdullah ruled until his death in 2015 and was succeeded by his half-brother Salman.
The current king. So that brother-to-brother line held for decades.
It did. For over 60 years, power passed between the sons of Ibn Saud.
But King Salman changed things up significantly.
He really did a major break with tradition. First, he made his half-brother Muqrin crown prince,
Okay.
but then very quickly replaced him with his nephew, Mohammed bin Nayef.
So uncle to nephew, a shift already.
A definite shift. But then came the really big move in 2017.
Removing Mohammed bin Nayef.
And appointing his own son, Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, as crown prince.
Back to father to son for the first time since Ibn Saud.
Exactly. A huge shift, signaling a potential new era for how succession works there.
And that move, appointing MBS, hasn't been without, let's say, complications or controversy.
No, certainly not. Especially after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, there were reports, suggesting unease within the family about MBS becoming king.
Really? Who else was mentioned?
Some reports pointed towards Prince Ahmed, King Salman's brother, as someone certain family members might prefer.
Ahmed. He'd been critical before, hadn't he?
He had reportedly voiced criticism, yes, and was apparently among those who opposed MBS's appointment back in 2017. So, yeah, definite internal dynamics around the succession still.
Let's shift gears a bit to political power. It's clear the king is at the top, absolute power almost.
Pretty much, yes. Head of state, monarch, appoints and dismisses the cabinet ministers who run things in his name.
And key positions usually stay within the family.
Traditionally, yes. Defense, interior, foreign affairs, plus all the regional governorships almost always held by an Al Saud prince.
But not all ministries.
No, things like finance, labor, oil, often given to commoners, technocrats, though sometimes with a junior prince as a deputy.
But ultimate decisions rest with the family.
Always. Though keeping the ulema, the religious scholars, happy, along with the merchants and the wider public, that's always been crucial for their stability.
The article used the term power fiefdoms. That paints quite a picture.
It's a good description, actually, because senior princes often held major posts for decades.
Faisal as foreign minister.
For ages. Or King Abdullah heading the National Guard for decades. Crown Prince Sultan running defense and aviation for something like 50 years.
Wow, so they build up immense personal power bases within those ministries.
Exactly. Appointing their own loyalists, their sons, building up wealth and influence within that specific domain. Real fiefdoms.
And even within the family, it's not always united. There are factions.
Definitely not monolithic. You have clan loyalties, the Suderi Seven being the classic example.
Right.
You have personal ambitions, different ideas about reforms, how much power the ulema should have, all sorts of internal divisions and competitions. Succession questions also fuel this.
Okay. Now, wealth. The numbers are just staggering.
They really are. It's hard to pin down exactly, but the family's collective net worth, easily hundreds of billions of dollars.
Minimum.
Minimum $100 billion is often cited, making them one of the wealthiest families on Earth, certainly the richest royals.
And some estimates go much higher.
Yeah.
Into the trillions.
If you factor in the value of Saudi Aramco, the state oil company they effectively control, and the oil reserves themselves, yeah, some estimates hit $1.4 trillion or even more.
Mind-boggling. And individuals within the family are famously wealthy, too.
Absolutely. Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, for example, Ibn Saud's grandson, consistently ranks among the world's richest people. The wealth is just immense.
But all this power, all this wealth, it hasn't shielded them from opposition or controversy, has it?
Not at all. Their rule, being authoritarian, has drawn a lot of criticism over the years.
Historically, too.
Oh, yes. There was the Ikhwan uprising back in Ibn Saud's time, this sort of zealous tribal militia.
Right.
And then the really dramatic Grand Mosque seizure in Mecca in 1979 by dissidents. That shook the kingdom.
And more recently?
More recently, things like the execution of Sheikh Nimr, a prominent Shia cleric, along with others in 2016, caused huge outcry.
The siege of Al-Wamiyah. Human rights concerns.
Yes, the crackdown in the eastern province, allegations of abuses, these have led to significant international condemnation.
The article also mentioned some quite specific personal allegations against senior figures.
It did. There were reports alleging Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman kept his own mother away from the king for a time.
That's quite something.
Indeed. And of course, the Khashoggi assassination remains a major point of international criticism.
Plus the Yemen war.
The Yemen conflict, the intervention in Bahrain, these have drawn heavy criticism too. Add to that reports of alleged intimidation of former officials, the formation of opposition groups abroad.
And even stories about mistreatment of staff by some royals.
Yes, there have been instances reported over the years, sometimes involving incidents overseas. It all contributes to the controversial side of their story.
Okay, Finally, just briefly, the titles and symbols, they matter, don't they?
They do, symbols of authority and legitimacy. Male royals are emirs, princes.
But there's a difference in how they're addressed. HRH versus HH.
Right. Sons and grandsons of kings get His Royal Highness, HRH. Great-grandsons and those from the cadet branches we talked about get His Highness, HH. A subtle distinction.
And the king's special title.
Custodian of the two holy mosques. Hugely important, emphasizing their religious role regarding Mecca and Medina.
And the flag, the royal standard.
Green flag, the Shahada, the Declaration of Faith in white script, a white sword for justice. The king's personal one also has the national emblem, the crossed swords and palm tree, embroidered in gold. Very symbolic.
Okay. So, bringing this all together, it's quite a journey, isn't it?
It really is. From, a small settlement in Diriyah, these tribal roots.
To ruling a major global power.
Exactly. Navigating religious movements, making alliances, dealing with the explosion of oil wealth, complex family politics.
And facing down opposition and controversy along the way.
Constantly. Hopefully this deep dive drawing on that detailed article has given everyone a clearer, more engaging picture of this really influential family.
Yeah, a really complex and fascinating story.
Absolutely. And maybe thinking about everything we've discussed, especially those recent shifts in succession, the global pressures, it leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
Wondering what?
Well, what are the biggest challenges, maybe the biggest opportunities facing the House of Saud in the years ahead? Something to mull over.
Like the future of oil, regional stability, human rights.
Exactly. Those big questions that spin out from their story. Lots to think about.